Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. 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 Awesome! Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to RWBY Grimm Eclipse. I'm your host, Dusk. Unfortunately, Gage is being a stubborn brick and wants me to embarrass myself in front of live audience. So I'll be reading RWBY 18 plus fanfic for funsies, you know, that kind of fun. God fucking damn it. I mean, like, seriously? I have to? Fuck's sake. I will pick Pyrrha. Let's get into it. How to do those solo trophies.
Good news, team. The coordinates of Merlot's secret lab were contained within the data retrieved from the terminal. An airship has been deployed and will rendezvous with you shortly.
We'll take care of everything. You can count on us.
When we get our first viewer, I'll start reading the fanfic out loud.
Leave it to me. We won again? Is that a new record?
The usual time. 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. The usual time of 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock.
You should be entering a power facility. Exploit everything you see that may be vital to Merlot's operation.
You're not authorized to be in here.
I think you've had enough power going to your head, Merlot. Leave it to me.
Uh-oh. Well, I am quite tired today. For no good reason.
You did it! That will deliver a shock to Merlot's system.
Fine then. That's how you want to play.
I have a bad feeling about this.
There we go.
Move.
I fixed the music so I won't get in trouble hopefully this time.
According to my map of the lab, this room contains more processing equipment for his serum. You need to take it out. All of it.
He's powerless without his serum. Destroy it.
Stop him!
Gah, hey, KK. I gotta. How are you doing? I have Yowie for you. I sadly do not have Oscar X Whitley because there is no Oscar X Whitley. I tried looking all over fanfiction and couldn't find any Oscar X Whitley smart. But I will read off one I found, which is John and Ren. Ren and John get busy. Oh man. Yeah, sadly no, but I got Ren and John, so you should be happy for that. Still Yowie. But no, how have you been, Coco? Before I begin. Let's continue the draw next Emerald first before that. Ah, fuck, I gotta look for that. Oh, no. Where did that one go? Okay, where did that one go? I can't find it. I'll just start the John X. Here we go. RWBY Sex Story is the chapter of John and Ren Get Busy. It was a late summer night at the Juniper dorm room. While Pyrrha and Nora were out having fun with their friends on Team RWBY, Ren stayed home with John, helping him with a research paper that was due tomorrow. Although he missed the chance to be with friends, he was excited to finally spend time with his secret crush. Ren was staring at John's golden hair, his slender but muscular figure, his deep blue eyes, his tender face, and his bulging penis. Can't believe I'm reading this out loud. Which was apparent even with the loose sweatpants the blonde was wearing. His striking appearance began clouding Ren's mind. Ren, John yelled, trying to get his friend's attention. The black-haired teen awoke from his daze. Yes, John? How should I finish the conclusion? Should I just sum up my findings? No, you run through the risk of sounding repetitive, Ren advised. Try stating what this paper means for dust companies in the coming future. You'll give your project more meaning that way. Okay, sounds good, John replied. He paused, then started out another sentence. Thanks for your help today, Ren. Ren was dumbstruck and fumbled to reply. Yeah, don't mention it. Ren checked the time, 11:15. What time are the girls coming back? Ren asked John. I don't know, sometime tomorrow night? Ren was overcome with tremendous excitement and anxiety. He had a whole night with John. That meant he had a lot of time to do something great or fuck up dramatically. The pressure started to get to him, and Ren began hyperventilating. And as Ren had a mini panic attack, he heard John say something. Boy, is it hot in here. I feel all sweaty. Oh no, Ren thought to himself as his pants began to rise. Mega gay yowies for sinners. She requested it, I'm reading it. Oblivion King. The rest of the stream is going to be probably normal and Yuri. But for now, it's just this story. Also, I'm one of the most massive sinners amongst all my friends. So man, the piece of shit. Nah, kidding. Oh no, Yeah, I read that bit. John peeled off his t-shirt, revealing a toned, slim torso, glistening in sweat. Oh no, yeah. John slowly bent over and pulled his pants down, showing off his sexy legs and cute bubble butt, clad in some tight underwear. Why do I have to read this? Yes, I know you're right, Oblivion King, but still, I'm going to read this all. A promise is a promise, and I never back down on my word. Oh no, Ren thought to himself as he felt his cock on the edge of eruption. Ren? Yeah? I'm gonna go to sleep. Good night. Night, John. I'm a man of my word, Oblivion King. I promised Coco I'd read a yaoi story. Here it is. Also, I was also promised a Nora as well. And Coco, we got more RWBY characters, which is awesome. Ren turned off the light and got under the covers, but he couldn't sleep. His penis was too hard from thinking about John. His smooth, slender figure, his gorgeous face, his golden mane, his cute, enticing, firm, tight ass, and that long, thick... Why do I have to read this? And that long, thick, powerful, juicy 8-inch cock. Oh god, ow. Fuck Red Thought. He needed release. He began stripping himself down to his skin.
I'll add this to the collection.
So that only his strong, naked physique was under the covers. He wrapped his hand around his pulsating dick and began to masturbate. He imagined he was in the locker room alone with his crush John in his uniform. Ren gave Ren a desperate look of intense yearning as he removed his clothes. He bent over with his ass facing his dark-haired friend and began to unbuckle his khakis. He removed his pants slowly, teasing Ren with a look at John completely naked, kneeling in front of him. The blonde looked up at his friend innocently as his left hand wrapped around his own hardening cock. He slowly moved his hand up his shaft, then slid it down. He did this until his cock was as long as hard as it was going to be. The blonde teen then unbuckled Ren's pants and slowly pulled them to the floor. He pulled his friend's erect dick and began to slowly stroke it up and down. He added twisting motions to make it more satisfying. Imaginary Jean then started to tease his friend by licking Ren's thick, meaty cock. At first, he used his tongue to play with the top of his penis, but he began to run it along the underside of his friend's dick. He licked from the base of the juicy cock all the way up to the top, then began to take Ren into his mouth.
This room contains more for his serum.
He first started to suck on only the top of his penis, but as John continued, he started to take more dick in his mouth. Eventually, it started to go down the blonde's tight throat. With this image in mind, Ren began increasing his stroking pace. His fist was holding his dick as tightly as possible and pumping his manhood with great power. Oh god. As he pictured himself direct throat fucking his crush. He felt the blonde gag on his throbbing member as he desperately jacked off. He began to whimper, "Ooh, John, suck me," as he began to shake the bed with powerful desire to come. Then, as Ren pictured himself coming all over the blonde's face, he unleashed a powerful torrent of cum. The sperm shot straight upwards into his blanket and back down onto his dick. As his spurts became less powerful, his dick became drenched in his own thick semen. Oh my god. Kate, what have you done? You've doomed me. You doomed me. As he was preparing to go to sleep, Ren felt a hand collapse onto his softening member. The hand started to slowly stroke Ren's cock back to a full erection. Another hand joined in tandem and began to massage Ren's balls, coaxing a moan from the Asian teen. The hands started to increase their pace and add motions to further stimulate Ren's cock. The black-haired teen was on the brink of another orgasm when the hands stopped. Ren turned to see he was teasing him, and to his pleasant surprise, it was John. The blonde whispered seductively in his ear, "Get to the wall and bend over, baby." Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh my... Ah, fuck, does anybody have unsee juice so I can fucking wash my eyes of this filth? Yeah, I'm gonna keep going, don't worry. I just gotta find out where I was up to because I stopped looking. Ren's heart jumped with excitement as he got up from the bed and spread his arsehole for his teammate. The blonde spat in his hand, rubbed his cock and positioned himself by Ren's arsehole. Without warning, he pushed himself inside his lover's body as he began a series of smaller, softer thrusts into his friend. John wanted this to be a very essential experience for the two, so he made sure to make it enjoyable for Ren. He wrapped his large, soft hands around his friend's cock and began to pump him, continuing from where they left off in bed. Ren was in a state of bliss as John jerked him off. He was also being fucked in the ass. He moaned, "Faster, John," and his partner obliged. John began to steadily increase pace of his thrusts into Ren and hastened the speed at which he pumped his friend's cock. John began pushing the entirety of his 8 inches into his friend's asshole, pushing the pair closer to orgasm. Suddenly, Ren let out a neurotic "oh" as John hit his friend's G-spot. Sudden surprise of this trigger, as well as the force of John's movements, made Ren come all over the wall in front of him, tightening his arsehole, which in turn made John instantly come, releasing a heavy load of semen into his lover. Ren turned. "Can I fuck you?" he asked. John smiled and nodded. Okay. Ren laid John missionary in front of him, with his right hand wrapped around the blonde's 8-inch cock. He prodded his lover's arsehole with his monstrous 10-inch cock. "Are you sure about this?" Ren asked. John smiled, looked into his eyes, and whispered the words, "Fuck me." Ren replied to this taunt. Oh my god, guys, stop messaging. I want to get over this as quick as possible. Ren replied to this taunt by hilting all of his 10 inches into the blonde's tight ass. John let out a passionate moan as he felt Ren's tremendous length inside him. Ren began thrusting hard into the nubile teen, while also giving him a passionate handjob. "Fuck, fuck, fuck," he huffed. He aggressively pounded away at John's anal virginity into oblivion, tearing up the boy's cute little ass. John was completely lost in a world of pleasure and pain as he felt Ren relentlessly pound his ass. He began screaming, "Oh, Ren, you're so fucking big, and fuck my fucking ass." Oh god, so he felt his asshole begin to stretch and fit to eternity of John's huge throbbing cock. Ren lifted John, turned him over, and began to fuck the shit out of John. He stopped caring about John's pleasure and just focused on his own. John realized this and tried to masturbate while he was getting fucked, but it proved to be too difficult for the teen as John was completely dominating his friend's asshole. He grabbed the boy's blonde mane and began to shout, "Who's your daddy, bitch?" as he pushed the teen's body into the wall behind the bed. John grabbed onto the bedpost as Ren continued his relentless pounding. Sweat glistened off their bodies as Ren pushed a pair of lovers to orgasm. John, in pure pleasure, started to shout, "Aye, fuck me harder." Ren did not hesitate to respond to his friend's cries and pushed his body even harder as he continued to increase his pace. He kept increasing his rhythm as he pounded that tight virgin ass. Ren was fucking so hard that everyone down the hall could hear the bed bang against the wall, as well as Jordan's cries of pleasurable pain. What was that? Velvet said as she began to undress Coco, hearing the banging several rooms over. I'm sure it's nothing. Let's just fuck before Goodwitch catches us. Fuck me faster, Jordan yelled. Ren pounded until he hit John's G-spot. Oh fuck me daddy. Ren continued his pace, steadily increasing. John shouted, I'm coming. Ren hilted himself as far as he possibly could reach as John reached his climax, releasing a torrent of cum onto the mattress under him. John's asshole tightened and pushed Ren over the edge as he came hard into his friend's ass. He held John in that hilted position for a minute before letting go. Semen dripped out of John's ass, all over John's balls and down John's legs. Ren, despite the ordeal, was still hard. Get on your knees, bitch, Ren commanded, using his newfound confidence. John did as he told, waiting for Ren's massive cock. Ren put his huge throbbing dick into his partner's mouth, grabbed his golden hair, and began to throat fuck him. Ren fucked his mouth harder than he had John's ass, shouting, "Suck this fucking dick," as he desperately yearned for release. John was tearing up from the incredible pain of Ren's massive throbbing cock in his throat as he complete inability to breathe. Where was I? Lost my place because I had to look up at the screen. Fuck. Just when John thought he would pass out, Ren came hard down his throat, spraying ropes of thick, creamy cum into the blonde. John tried to swallow all of these rich, delicious fluids, but some of the semen began coming out of his mouth and nose. Releasing his head, Ren quickly began to apologize. "Sorry, I didn't know I would be so controlling during sex," panicking as he realized how he treated John during the affair. John coughed a little, then showed a bright, sticky smile as he said, "That's fine, I actually liked it." He paused. "Let's do this again sometime." Ren's heart skipped a beat. "Okay," he replied. The end. Thank God. Oh, you had respect for me? My God. What a waste. You're welcome, Coco. Congratulations. There's your Yowie fanfic. Now, on to other fanfics.
Welcome to the
I need a minute. Oh, fuck.
Go ahead and get acquainted with my
Oh, more.
exercise.
Yes, more fanfics will be coming. I couldn't find any more Yowie fanfics. There were literally a total of 3. One was 6 chapters long over like 20,000 words, which I'm not going to read because it's more romance than sex. There's the... Actually, that was the only good, Yowie. Read some non-RWBY shit? I'm playing the RWBY game, so therefore I'm reading the RWBY stuff. Oh, unless you have a suggestion. What is your suggestion? And then I will look it up. No, just RWBY? Okay. Fine. Let's go for a classy Roman X Neo now. Because I've had this one in this book for a while, and I'm also going to shut my window because I should have done that the moment I started reading these fanfics. My God, I'm a dumbass. If I was loud enough, everyone would have heard me. Okay, Heist Cream. Don't really see why that would be a problem. Neo heard the voices in the abandoned apartment she shared with Roman. She wouldn't have been alerted to it had it been her boss's voice she heard. but this one was much softer and more feminine. People coming over wasn't an unusual anomaly, but most of them were men, thugs that worked for Roman. Curiously, the girl snuck from the bedroom and peered around the corner where 4 people stood in the small kitchen. One was Roman and the other 3 were strangers. At the back of the group were a young man and woman. The man with silvery grey hair had a smirk on his face. Directly next to him, a girl with bright red eyes and green hair looked around the small apartment with a look of paranoia. In front of both of them was one of the most beautiful women Neo had ever seen. She was tall, even in her heels, with creamy pale skin and darkly coloured hair that hid the right side of her face. She wore a dark red dress with golden trim that hugged her body in a flattering way. Even across the room, Neo could feel the aura of confidence and sex appeal that surrounded her. Blinking once, Neo's eyes shifted from brown and pink to a soft yellow. She crept forward slowly, did her best to stay out of view. I paid you the lien 3 weeks ago, Roman. Why haven't I gotten what I asked for? She leaned forward a little, only a few inches away his face. We had an arrangement, remember?
Leave it to me.
Roman let out a nervous chuckle. I know. I go out and steal more dust for you, and well, your scheme. And in return, I get more freedom in my thieving ventures. Maybe move out of this place, though. I honestly quite like it. He shook his head. Don't worry, Cinder. I've already started making plans on a job. I'm going to have a chat with Junior Zhong, and hopefully get some extra muscle, then knock over a dust shop in Vale. The man sighed as he pulled a small case of cigars from his pocket, put one in his mouth and put the case away. He started searching his pockets for his lighter, but couldn't seem to find it. Shaking his head, he looked at Cinder and smirked as he pulled the cigar from his lips and held it out. Got a light? Cinder rolled her eyes before snapping her fingers, making a tiny flame appear. Roman put the cigar back in his mouth and lit it on the flame, taking a few puffs before straightening up and tilting his hat to her. Thanks, doll. The woman narrowed her eyes at him, but before she could retort, the green-haired girl tapped her on the shoulder and whispered something in her ear. Ah, yes, I had almost forgotten. Thank you, Emerald.
This was my most potent battle.
Cinder crossed her arms and looked back at Roman. And what of our other arrangement, She tilted her head slightly and placed one hand on his chest, feigning sweetness. We've ignored your mistakes and late deposits thus far, but this issue is of much bigger importance. I need to see results as soon as possible. Understand? Roman took a long drag of his cigar before blowing the smoke towards the ceiling. He stared up at the partially decayed roof before speaking. I'll find him, he said. Although if it's so important, I'll have to put our business endeavor on hold. That won't be a problem, will it? He leaned in his face in close to hers. After all, it's like you say, mistakes and late deposits are one thing, but this is priority number 1. You could potentially have a break from my perceived shortcomings. However, that puts your big and mighty plan on a delay that could last quite a while. So make a choice. He raised an eyebrow as he leaned even closer, supporting himself on his cane. Dust or Huntsman? Which do you want first? I will find one in a minute. Give me time. It's actually quite hard on fanfiction because half the fanfiction writers don't tag who's in the things, so I have to go through multiples.
Welcome to the testing ground, students. Why don't you go ahead and get acquainted with my test subjects?
Cinder was quiet for several moments, glaring into Roman's eyes. Huntsman, she said, finally gritting her teeth. I want his head on a burning spike. She straightened her back and leaned away from Roman. Don't make me wait too long on this, Torchwick. If you thought I was impatient before, you haven't seen anything yet. With that, she turned and left her apartment, 2 companions in tow. As soon as the door closed, Neo popped up. Ah, there you are. Oh no, sorry. As soon as the door closed, Neo popped up from the breakfast bar and slammed her small fist down on the surface. Her eyes turned a dark green of jealousy. If there was one thing Neo hated, it was being left out. She is obviously not in the loop on something very large. Angrily, she pointed at the door where the strangers had left and narrowed her eyes at Roman. Roman sighed as he turned towards Neo. Ah, there you are. He chuckled as he approached the girl. I know, I should have told you about it. But Cinder and her lackeys approached me a month ago, and I figured I'd get the money out of it and perhaps surprise you with, I don't know, a trip to a little town with a lovely little restaurant where you could have all the ice cream you want. He could see the appearance of her eyes, and he knew she wasn't going to be talked out of this. Neo working with his people is surely going to make things easier for us, so we don't have to hide so much. Isn't that what you want? After a long silence, the man sighed again. To answer the question, I'm sure you're thinking, no, I've not slept with Cinder. Do you trust me on that? I know you know I can't understand you when you don't elaborate on your emotions. The girl's eyes shifted from the envious green to an angry orange-red. Climbing onto the counter, she sat down and turned her back to him. She crossed her arms over her small chest and put her nose in the air, signifying that not only did she not trust him, but she was also angry with him for all this nonsense. Now, Neo, don't be like that. The man stepped closer, pulling his hat off his head and placing it on hers. I'll admit, I flirt with her mostly to make her uncomfortable. However, it also serves a greater purpose. He sat up on the counter with his back to the girl, running his fingers through his orange hair. I do it because as long as I can keep her somewhat interested in me, no matter how that interest may be, she'll be less inclined to attempt to hurt me. The same goes for you. If I can keep her at bay with my flirtations, she'll leave you alone, and that's the primary reason why I do it. Because she doesn't mess around. She's dangerous. I don't want you getting caught in the crossfire. There were several long seconds of silence before Neo's eyes finally shifted to a soft pink color. Turning around and sitting up on her knees, the girl shoved lightly at Roman. Then suddenly she wrapped her arms around his neck from behind and buried her face in the side of his neck, his hat falling from her head and tumbling to the floor. At the same time, she grabbed 2 handfuls of his white jacket and clung to it as a sign of possession. Roman smiled softly as he wrapped his arms around the girl. He knew just how attached to him Neo was, and he would have been lying if he said he didn't love it. He gently kissed the top of her head. His softer side had always been a rare side of him to see, but he didn't mind showing it to her. Come on, let's go get something to eat for dinner. Sound good? Just relax for the rest of the evening. The girl nodded as she pushed herself away from him and off the counter, walking around to a fridge and pulling it open. Inside there was a bottle of wine, an old block of cheese, and a small container of milk. With her eyes shining their bright pink, she grabbed the milk and sat it on the counter. Once again. She then looked up to where the cereal was kept in a high cabinet above the fridge. Pursuing her lips, she pointed at the cabinet and looked to Roman. When he didn't move, she started bouncing in place as she pointed harder, grabbing the milk in her free hand and holding it out towards him. Cereal? Roman took the milk and sighed. You and your eating habits. Alright, fine. He walked over and grabbed the box of cereal before reaching into a cabinet that had long since lost its door and pulling out a bowl. He opened the box and poured some of its contents into the bowl before following suit with the milk. After grabbing his spoon, he stuck it into the mill and slid the bowl over to Neo. Dig in, shorty. Instead of sitting in a chair at the counter like a normal person, Neo climbed back up onto the surface and crossed her legs, picking up the bowl and taking a huge bite of the sugary cereal. A smile coming to her face as she closed her eyes and chewed happily. After several more bites, she opened her eyes and saw Roman watching her. She looked around, knowing there was no more food in the house and that Roman wasn't fond of the sweet meal. She pointed at him and tilted her head, putting her hand on her stomach. Roman shook his head. I'll be alright. Besides, you're the one who hasn't had anything to eat today. He picked his hat up off the floor and dusted it off. You've been with me for a long time, Neo, but even then, you don't need to worry about me. So, just so I can keep getting us something to do, can get paid and can eat. He smiled a little. Roman was never one to show how he really felt about something. His charismatic personality was perfect for his line of work, but he knew deep down that their struggles would likely never end. Nonetheless, he didn't mind. He was thankful for a little hat. Though the building they lived in was abandoned, they managed to have electricity and running water. The furniture, though stolen, made their living arrangement feel like a real home. the end of the day, that was all they really needed. Listen, Neo, would you want me to leave this place? If all of this goes well, we could find a better home. Maybe even a place where we wouldn't have to work so hard just to keep the place standing. Call me crazy, but I feel like we could accomplish that. And you could have all the sugary delights you want. Holy shit, the chat just went... Sorry, I just caught up on the chat. Things I do for fans. Oh, that's that story. I don't need to go back to that. Neo blinked a couple of times, tilting her head as she thought about what he said. She knew he was talking about it, whatever he was doing for Cinder. He obviously expected to make a fair amount of Leanne from these jobs. After a moment, she pointed between the both of them, same questioning look in her now brown and pink eyes. Roman watched her for a moment before nodding. Together, he promised her, like always. Neo thought about it for a moment before hopping down and walking to the door. She pointed at the floor, telling Roman to stay here, grabbing a trench coat from a hook by the door. Neo pulled it on and put the hood over her head before exiting the building. Once outside, she glanced up and saw Roman watching her from the dirty window. Giving him a wink, her eyes turned a deep purple color, and she began walking down the street. Not half a block from their apartment, she saw a man in quite a hurry carrying a briefcase and several books. With a smirk, the girl crossed over to his side of the street, and just as they passed each other, she pretended to slip in a puddle, knocking into the man and sending all of his things spilling into the ground. "Damn it!" the man shouted. "Why don't you watch where—" But as soon as he saw Neo's face, he stopped shouting. The girl looked to be nearly in tears as she was gesturing to her throat and mouth, her face scared and apologetic. "Oh, are you alright?" The man seemed to be entranced by her innocence and beauty, forgetting her anger instantly. "Here, let me help you up," he said as he took her hand and steadied her. "Are you alright?" Neo nodded and made a begging sign with her hands. "No, don't apologize, it's okay." He began to gather his things, and Neo helped, but what he didn't see was when her small hand slipped into a pocket of his coat, retrieved his wallet before slipping it into hers. When all the things were gathered, he looked Neo over. "You sure you're alright?" The girl nodded, and the man seemed satisfied. "A pretty girl like you shouldn't be in part of this town so late," he chuckled as he checked his watch. "Ruffians scour these streets. Be sure to get home as soon as possible, okay?" Neo nodded and waved to the man, smiling gratefully till he rounded the corner. When he was out of sight, she took the wallet out, pulled out nearly 80 Lien, and threw the wallet on the ground. She then walked across the street to a pizza place and purchased a fresh pie. When she returned to the apartment, she proudly put the pizza on the counter. Pie on the counter. Not pizza. Fucking writers. And handed the remaining money out to Roman, bowing with a smirk and a clever little heist. Fine. There. Roman chuckled as he applauded her entire quest for money and food. "Looks like I taught you well," he said, as he walked over to her, stroked her cheek gently. After a moment, he turned away and removed his gloves. "Now then, let's dig into this pie, shall we?" He opened the box and pulled out a slice. "Do you want the first piece, Neo? Champion spoils." Excitedly, the girl came over and opened her mouth, taking a big bite. Cheese and fuck, I'll just call it pizza from here on out, considering the writer forgot they wrote pie. Cheese and pizza sauce oozed from the crust, and she chewed happily, licking the remnants from her lips. And so the two of them sat on a stolen couch watching a fuzzy TV as they enjoyed their ill-gotten gains. Once both had had their fill, Neo put the rest away, before plopping down on the couch and laying her head in Roman's lap. Reaching around to her back pocket, she pulled a secret chocolate bar she had stolen from the pizza place out and unwrapped it. Noticing how Roman watched her carefully, he may not have been one for sweets, but chocolate was another matter. With a playful smirk and her eyes now an amorous dark pink, she popped off a rectangle of chocolate, placed one half in her mouth, and tilted her head back, silently inviting Roman to share in her stolen treasures. The man slowly leaned forward. staring into the girl's mismatched eyes. While his face was still inches from hers, he raised a finger to the opposite end of the chocolate piece, pushed it, the entirety of it, into her mouth. In the next moment, he captured her lips in a deep and dominating kiss, tasting the chocolate in her mouth as a hand lifted to cup her cheek. Her lips parted just enough for him to slide his tongue in and tangle with her own. The heated kiss continued while the chocolate melted between their tongues, either by the warmth of their mouths or the passion of the kiss. Neo had been able to moan. She would have had the second his tongue slid into her mouth. As he cupped her cheek, she pushed one of her hands into his hair and tightened her fist. Without breaking their exchange, the girl pushed herself up and moved so she could straddle his lap, taking deep breaths into the second their lips were apart. Neo was able to lengthen the kiss. While doing so, she used her free hand to pop the button of her jacket and shrugged it off to her shoulders, leaving her in just the bodice and her stolen black lace bra. The moment Neo had maneuvered into Roman's lap, he started unbuttoning the 3 buttons of his coat, before pulling it off and tossing it aside. His hands wandered over the girl's body as he felt his manhood beginning to harden. He hadn't noticed his growing erection until it felt pressing against Neo's thigh. The covered contact made him gasp as he broke the kiss to breathe. "Damn it, Neo, why do I always crave you like this?" he asked as he reached around and undid the lace bra. "It's been too long since we've been able to spend our time together like this. We need to make up for lost time." He pulled the bra away and let it fall to the floor. "Here? Or would you rather the bed?" She didn't bother trying to answer him.
Leave it to me.
She didn't bother trying to answer him as she took his lips again, hungrily, biting at them as she tugged the grey scarf around his neck. When it was loose, she tossed it aside before moving onto his button-up, careful to unclasp each one of the buttons as the mouth migrated from his lips to his neck and down his chest. She was shook. She shook she was low enough. She slid off his lap, and Roman spread his legs for her, watching in anticipation as she unbuckled his belt and pulled them down enough for his erection to be fished out of his pants. Using one of her steel glove hands, the girl held his member upright and made direct eye contact as she slowly dragged her tongue up his entire length from balls to tip, twirling her tongue around it before repeating the action as she was enjoying a frozen treat on a hot day. Roman's head fell back as he let out a low moan. "Oh fuck, don't stop, baby girl." His fingers slowly trailed through Neo's hair as he began breathing heavily. Suck on it, Neo, your mouth is always so good." He looked down and at her and grinned pervertedly. Do a good enough job and maybe I'll let you ride me this time. Does that sound like a good trade, baby girl? The girl stopped licking long enough to nod. She leaned up on her knees and pulled his head down to her, giving him a deep, slow kiss. After that, she removed her gloves and tossed him aside before taking his cock back into her possession. She stroked him for several seconds as she took deep breaths, preparing herself. Then suddenly she opened her mouth and wrapped her lips around him, bobbing her head up and down slowly as his cock hit the back of her tight throat. The man let out a louder moan as he felt her beginning to suck and swallow around him. Oh gods, keep going. His fingers continued tangling in the air, clenching into a fist around the multicolored locks, while he thought about the many things he wanted to do with the girl. Fuck yeah, you're so good. We'll have to make this a regular thing. Only next time I want to eat that sweet pussy of yours before I fuck you. He chuckled through his moans as he pulled his shirt off completely and tossed it to the floor. Shit, I can't tell you how badly I need you right now, baby girl. You're gonna make me come if you keep doing that. Hearing his praises fueled the girl's desire to keep going. Pleasing Torchwick in any way possible was what she strived to do every single day, even if such pleasure was from sexual gratification. Just hearing the way he reacted to her sent shivers down her spine and made her ache deep in her loins. for her. Giving him release was almost as good for her as getting it herself. That's why when he warned her about his impending orgasm, she began to work even harder, drooling on his cock as she used her hand to stroke what she couldn't swallow. Several times she choked on his and tears sprang to her eyes, but that didn't stop her from letting him fuck her throat. After several minutes, his grip on her hair and the couch tightened as he yelled obscenities carelessly. His hips hitched upwards just as she felt a tightening in his balls, and her mouth was suddenly filled with so much cum. She couldn't swallow it all. As she wrecked herself away, she coughed, his semen dripping down her chin and onto her naked breasts. As she struggled to catch her breath, her cheeks a bright pink. One second. Yep. Roman took a moment to compose himself before sliding off the couch and taking Neo's face in his hands. "Looks like you've made a mess," he said as he ran a thumb over her chin, wiping his cum away and locking it off the digit before capturing her lips in a soft and loving kiss. "I ought to repay the favor. You made me feel good, and now I'll do the same for you." As he spoke, he removed her bodice and set it aside. His lips trailed over her delicate skin, kissing and biting. One second. As he went, he made her lay on her back as he undid her pants and pushed them down. He didn't hesitate to shove her long boots off with them. This action left her only in a pair of black lace panties. "You do love stealing lingerie, don't you?" He chuckled as he grabbed her underwear and started slowly sliding it down her legs. "I love your pussy, baby girl. You know I can't ever get enough." He ran his fingers along her thighs slowly and moved them onwards towards her womanhood. "You're all mine, Neo. No one else can touch you like this." Feeling his hands on her bare skin being exposed to him made Neo's pussy quiver, and she could feel herself becoming more and more aroused by the second. She let her eyes close slowly, and she started biting her lips. As she lifted her hips off the ground, trying to get him to touch her. When that didn't work, Nia decided to take matters into her own hands. Slowly, she guided her right hand to a small breast, while the left slid down her body and between her legs, finding her engorged clit, and immediately started to rub the button in slow circles. Sounds good. Roman smirked as he watched her pleasure herself. "Someone is impatient," he said as he pulled her hand away from her womanhood, licked her fingers and tasted her wetness. "You're soaked, baby girl." He removed his pants and underwear entirely, letting his manhood become fully erect again. "I'll take care of you, don't you worry." He climbed over her and slid a hand down her skin. Bringing them to her clit and rubbing it slowly. "Look at me, Neo," he said as his deep green eyes met hers. Without breaking eye contact, he pressed his length against her before slowly starting to push into her tight entrance. As soon as the tip of his cock slid into her, the girl's eyes grew wide as they changed from a dark pink to a bright red, only a few shades darker than the color of her cheeks. Her mouth fell open and she sucked in a breath while her legs automatically bent at the knee and wrapped around him, while her arms wrapped around his neck. She began to push forward, her eyes rolled back, and she began to arch and tug on his hair. All silent signs that whatever he was doing was making her feel better than she had in a long time. Roman needed no words of his own to translate how he was feeling in the moment. His right wall squeezed each inch as it entered her in a pleasurable, painful way. Even still, his thrust was slow and gentle as he brought his lips to hers again. Kissing her deeper than before, he didn't need to verbally convey how deeply he cared for her, and he wouldn't have been able to find the words anyway. As he kissed her, he wrapped his arms around her waist and held her close while his movement sped up. The little gasps and pants for breath were as close to verbalizing as the young woman could get. When he kissed her this time, it was so much different than when he kissed her before. Granted, this wasn't their first time sleeping together. Over the years, they had shared many horrid encounters, but this was completely different. The way Roman was kissing her and touching her was gentler and more possessive. Man making sure she got the most pleasure out of it. Suddenly Roman hit a certain spot deep within her that made her back arch as she took in a deep breath, her fingernails digging into the flesh at his shoulders. The man could tell her pleasure and helped hitting the same place over and over, making Neo squirm and cling to him more. Her nails biting into his skin as she dragged her nails down his flesh, leaving long red streaks as she went. Suddenly Neo felt herself reaching a breaking point, and she buried her face in her neck. As her whole body went rigid, and she had an hard orgasm around him. The tightening walls around his member ultimately overcame the thief, and Roman reached his climax, releasing his cum into the girl. He moaned heavily against her lips as he finished, relaxing her small body before pulling out of her and falling beside her. His arms remained around her, pulling her close to him and holding her. Roman had never been one to openly speak about how he felt. However, in the moments where they could lay in each other's arms, surrounded by what little they owned, he was happy. Despite having almost nothing to call their own, they had each other, and that was enough for him. Though he never admitted to it, he looked at Neo and chuckled, "You always know how to wear me out, don't you?" Slowly a smug smile came to the girl as she nodded once more before kissing him for a few seconds. She pushed away from him then and picked up his black button-up, putting it on and redoing the buttons before curling up on the couch. Suddenly a huge yawn overtook the young man, and Roman chuckled. Well, fucking spelling. Roman chuckled, pushing himself up. "Maybe I'm not the only one, huh?" he said as he scooped her up and kissed her on the top of her head. "Come on, short stuff, let's get you to bed." The end. I've got to find more now. And I just lost again. Oh well. So that was Heist Cream by Angel 3x3 Pro. See if there's any for her. Let's see if there's any more. That's Sean and Cinder. That's Glinda teaches John a lesson. That's Y spends a day with Blank. That's Yang meets Black. Ren, Sun, Yang, and Blake shower. Yours your chapter part 1. Some random pairings part 1. John and Blake shower. Rule breakings and punishment. What's the random pairings? Okay, so that is some real random pairings that I'm not going to read. Oh, can't hide who you are. Yeah, the 6th chapter one that I'm not going to read because it's 10,000 fucking words and it's literally just Sun and Neptune. And John. Like, it's a romantic story between the three of them. Ruby X John. Let's go through here. Something that Coco might like if she is still here. Are you still here, Coco? I think I clicked on the wrong fan fiction. More. Okay. I clicked on the wrong fan fiction, and I was like, oh, I wonder what this one is. And then I read the chapters. Winter and White, Sister Time. Raven and Yang, Mum Love. Salem, Cinder, Emerald and Neo, the slaves. And Carly and Blake, the kittens of love. So, yeah, I'm just gonna keep scrolling. Fuck, so many of them are OCs. No, that doesn't make sense. No, that's OCs. No, that's OCs. No. 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 Ooh. RWBY the Harem. It's not a harem, it's just two of them. Yes, hello, Roman Torchwick! 1 second, I just have to... That's 8 to 5. It is a pleasure to meet you, Roman. My mates and I are co-streamers, like we are streamers that usually stream together. He should be arriving later this afternoon, but right now I'm just reading fanfiction until he gets here. So far it has been an hour. But no, it's good to see someone else here as well. Well, we've done one yaoi, we've done one normal, we might as well do a Yuri one. A good one. Yeah. Heated excitement. Remember when the boys were all electric? Chapter 1. This is a RWBY X Weiss one. Third person. The bathroom was a cold place, just like her heart. But no, my mate and I regularly stream Roman all week. So you should see us every now and again. Baby, come back. Nice. Maybe I should actually play the game now. Like, hey, Neo! What's up?
Leave it to me.
How's your day been? I should actually try to get this trophy now that I'm here. And I died. Sleep? Yeah. That's how my day went mostly today. It was me doing laundry and sleeping.
Don't be shy, students. You could learn a lot from this enhanced specimen. They won't teach you a thing about this back at Beacon. You're easy prey. Is that the best you got?
So how did you discover my channel, Roman? Did it just randomly come up in your feed, or did you know one of the many other RWBY characters we have regularly in our streams?
Remember your training, everyone. We've got this.
Don't be shy, students. You could learn a lot from this enhanced specimen. They won't teach you a thing about this back at Beacon. Stings a little, doesn't it? You're easy prey.
Just saw it, thought, why not? Well, okay, until my friend, esteemed friend, Lord Pop, or better known as Gage to the rest of our community, decides to stream and jump on, I will read another fanfiction. Ooh, let's go with a good Lancaster. Ruby! The shriek of her name impaled her eardrums and sent a devastating wave of shock into her dormant brain, shattering what was once another dose of sleep she desperately needed. She switched her head around, baffled by such an abrupt awakening. Her eyes came into contact with the glaring face of her professor 3 inches from her nose. She felt the anger-shaking breath of the professor against her face. The smell of coffee was strong and stiff. "So sorry, sir," Ruby managed a little whimper. "I didn't get enough sleep last night." Ruby held her breath. Professor Oobleck may seem like all skin and bones at first sight, but when he gets angry, his temper matches those of Urz's mages. Many rumours have spread about how people have witnessed Oobleck wiping out a few dozen Grimms at once when a beowulf has stolen one of his coffee mugs. Professor Oobleck shook his head slowly, then backed off with his hand on his forehead. Ruby couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, flopping back into her seat. Ruby rose. Oobleck adjusted his glasses. "You have been an astounding student for the past few months. You've passed every exam with flying colours, and you're an ace at fighting. With such an amazing student like you, how have you might be falling asleep in my class?" Ruby's shoulders tensed up once again. Ruby stammered. Ruby quickly skimmed her eyes across the room. Everybody had their eyes fixated upon Ruby, as if she was wearing nothing more than a pair of underwear right this instant. Please. Professor Oobleck sighed. "Please leave this classroom." Oobleck pointed his finger towards the exit behind all the eavesdropping students. "I'll talk to you after class has ended." Ruby lowered her head and got out from her seat and began making her way towards the exit. Rain clouds of shame formed inside her, began drowning her heart in humiliation as she heard the snickering and sneering of her classmates. It felt like a whole decade trying to reach for the door. When Ruby finally finished a great wall of guilt, she sunk into the ground, her back against the wall. "I can't believe this is happening," Ruby whispered, restraining a tear from falling down her cheek. "I promised myself that I will be the #1 huntress in this entire academy, and look at me now!" Ruby tightened her hands into a ball of fists. "I'm such a failure! I'm such a failure!" Ruby screamed. A mixture of anger and hatred towards herself flared up inside her body. Ruby felt tears rolling down her cheek, making a wet mess on her uniform. Ruby couldn't help but weep away like a child who is desperately searching for her lost teddy bear. "Need help?" A familiar voice caught Ruby's attention. Ruby raised her head to see Jaune staring back at her. "Jaune, what are you doing here?" Ruby tried to wipe away her tears, but it was pointless. Her uniform, now covered in tear stains, was obvious and showed what Ruby was doing the whole time out here. "I managed to sneak out of class," Jaune grinned. "It wasn't easy. I needed the right time for someone to distract Professor Oobleck," Jaune chuckled, then sat beside Ruby. Ruby blushed. Although Jaune can be a complete klutz time to time, she couldn't deny the fact that Jaune was a pretty handsome-looking guy. "You were crying because you fell asleep in class?" Jaune said, looking up at the building ceiling. "That's a stupid thing to cry for." Ruby felt the urge to burst into tears once again. "I promised myself to be in the best in class, but..." Grief itched Ruby's throat. "I somehow fell asleep in class. However will I become the best now?" The want to cry was obvious in Ruby's voice. A tear rolled down her cheek, then another. Soon Ruby was back at square one, weeping with all her might. Ruby just couldn't stop. She felt like her body would collapse any second. Ruby heard the miserable cries of agony in her head. "I'm so pathetic," Ruby thought. "I'm crying in front of somebody. I'm so pathetic." First Jaune, and soon the entire academy would now know of Ruby's wimp side. She couldn't take it anymore. Ruby was about to explode. She wanted to move out of this academy, anywhere. She felt like the whole world had just turned their backs in front of her. In a flash, Ruby's body was embraced by Jaune's arms. Both of Jaune's hands were cuffed around Ruby's small hips, making Ruby just blush a little bit. At first, Ruby was shocked. She let out a little squeal of astonishment and threw her arms in the air. Then Ruby brought her arms down and placed them on Jaune's muscular shoulders. A few seconds had passed, and Jaune grasp tightened a little bit. Ruby knew this was strange, coming from a man who had trouble even talking to a girl, let alone hugging one, but somehow enjoyed it. The way John's hands were placed firmly around her hips, the way John's body was pressed warmly against hers, gave Ruby a strange arousal. What was even weirder, that she enjoyed it. Weirder, however, was that Ruby had stopped crying entirely right after John's embrace. There was something so comforting about John that soothed Ruby from all her anguish. Ruby buried her head into John's shoulders, relief washing over her like a warm bubble bath. Oh, awesome! Do you mind chucking a subscribe my way so you can see more great content? We regularly stream like almost every day, around 6 o'clock, and then sometimes earlier. And that's awesome, being a prison guard in Uganda. Wouldn't be easy, being a prison guard. Oh, good. Have a good fucking day at work, man. Now, might as well finish this story. A few seconds passed before John let go of his grasp. John looked at Ruby in the eye. "Ruby," John said, in such a voice that Ruby could barely believe was John's, "you are not a failure. You never will be." John put both of his hands on Ruby's shoulders. "A little puny mistake will not change who you are. Trust me, you're an amazing huntress." Ruby's eyes widened in surprise. John smiled back. "Take a look at me. I have a hard time slaying an even Ursa Minor, and yet I'm still pushing in everything I've got," John said. "If you quit trying, then your whole team, even us, Team Juniper, will never forgive you. So you better get everything together and give it everything you've got, okay?" John put his right hand on Ruby's cheek. Ruby smiled. "All right," she answered, closing her eyes. "Thanks." John's hand was warm and felt reassuring on Ruby's cheeks. Ruby rested her head on John's shoulders. For some reason, Ruby had an urge to kiss John. "He is quite cute," Ruby thought, blushing. Ruby peered at John's body. Somehow looked strangely more muscular than any other time. Then slowly Ruby began to feel her body temperature rise. Ruby started breathing more heavily. Ruby had no idea what was going on, but she felt attracted to John. It was then Ruby noticed the details of John's body. The muscular arms, the lightning blonde hair, the brilliant blue eyes suddenly made Ruby feel hot and bothered. "Do I have a crush on John?" Ruby thought as she felt something wet near her abdomen. Ruby lowered her hands to feel what was causing the surge and gasped softly in surprise. "My pussy is wet?" Ruby lifted her skirt a little to see her panties drenched in juices. The fabric of her underwear was soaked thoroughly, and the shape and outline of her pussy was visible through the thin fiber. Ruby's face flushed red with embarrassment. "Did John turn me on that much?" Ruby turned her head and made eye contact with John. Something seemed a bit off. John seemed like he was breathing a lot more than usual. His cheeks a light shade of red, and there was something odd about his eyes. There was a spark of desire in his eyes. Ruby didn't know what, but she thought the desire was for her. Something caught Ruby's eyes. Ruby tilted her head downwards and saw something that caught her completely off guard. Just a red exclamation mark. "Whoa, it's huge!" Ruby bored her astonished eyes onto the size of Jordan's member, hard inside his pants. Even through the pants, Ruby can see the monstrosity of John's penis. She knew his dick would never be able to fit inside of her. Yet Ruby was more turned on by the second. She looked back at John. John's eyes were no longer staring back at Ruby, but rather at a much lower area. "He's staring at my drenched panties," Ruby thought. Is he as turned on as me? There was only one way to find out. "Hey, John?" Ruby's voice quivered. John's eyes flew back up. Yeah? John answered. "Kiss me." Ruby swung her arms around John's neck and brought it closer to her face. Ruby could see the surprised face of John. He tried to respond, but was too late. Ruby's lips struck John's and was shocked at how pleasurable it felt. Ruby felt John struggle for a second, and then settled down to enjoy the experience. This was Ruby's first kiss. One second. But she felt like she had experience. Every few seconds, RWBY felt John inhale deeply due to the pleasure. He's enjoying it, RWBY thought, and so was she. RWBY tried her best not to moan in pleasure. The kiss felt good, almost too good. John's kiss felt like one from an angel. Two lovers started making kissing noises loud enough for the entire academy to hear. Also, they're in the hallway doing this. Just want to point that out. They didn't care anymore. All they cared about was to make love to each other. They're in a fucking hallway of school. Ruby softly moaned when she felt John sinking his tongue into her mouth. This took Ruby by surprise. John's tongue was warm and soft and caressed the innards of Ruby's mouth. Kissing John felt good, but with his tongue exploring Ruby's mouth, the pleasure had only amplified greatly. Ruby stuck her tongue into her lover's mouth and slightly curled against John's tongue. This felt great. Ruby and John's tongues felt like they were a pair of couples themselves, coiling around each other like two snakes making love to each other. This went on for a couple of minutes. The two students' tongues battered each other back and forth as their lips pressed tighter and tighter against each other, when finally the cramped lip lock finally breaks apart. Ruby's mouth stayed open, and her tongue remained drooping out, a trail of saliva connected with John's. That kiss was amazing, Ruby thought. Her mind was taken aback from how pleasurable the kiss was, quickly to replace with a desire for sex. This is bad. Ruby's fingers started moving on her own. I'm starting to lose control of my body. Ruby's right hand softly grasped her left breast. Any point now, I'll... Ruby's other hand stared at her chest and began to slowly work its way to her panties. First, it was only a little jab to her brain, but as time passed on, Ruby felt this desire grow bigger and bigger. Soon as this craving for sex took control of her whole body, Ruby didn't care anymore. She didn't care about her sister, she didn't care about her team, she didn't care about this academy. All she wanted was sex. She's craving for sex. She had become a sex-driven maniac. Still in the fucking hallway. Like, I understand if they moved to a bedroom, but they're still in a fucking hallway. Like, right outside class. Yeah, Neo. Looks like you're quite wet down there. John interrupted Ruby's dirty thoughts. I think I can help. Ruby stared at John. He was eyeing her panties longingly, almost like a pervert. Ruby glanced at her panties again. They were now soaked even more than before. Streaks of her juices leaked out from her panties and onto her thighs, staining her leggings wet with embarrassing fluid. It seemed to turn John on a lot, as he grabbed Ruby's right arm and started spreading her legs apart. John worked so vigorously and swiftly that before Ruby could even respond, her legs were completely wide open, and her embarrassing wet panties were completely a display for John. In the fucking hallway. Like, I understand teenagers be horny, but they're in the hallway. Hallway. This is so lewd, Ruby thought, but I like it. Well, what was going to happen next? What will John do to her body? Ruby's pussy twitched in excitement. Seems like you're really enjoying the position you're in right now, John said with a tone of dominance in his voice. You're quite the naughty girl, aren't you? No, I'm not. Yes, you are. You're in a fucking hallway. You're both fucking exhibitionists at this rate. The sudden shift in John's behaviour caught Ruby off guard, and she didn't enjoy it. However, at the very core of Ruby's heart, she was turned on by this. Well, your pussy seems to be saying the exact opposite. John pointed his finger towards Ruby's private, now quivering with anticipation to be fucked. John laid his finger onto Ruby's clitoris, and Ruby felt a wave of pleasure radiate throughout her body. Not too strong, nor too weak, just enough for Ruby to crave more. John's fingers started rubbing up and down Ruby's clit, forcing Ruby to moan in pleasure. Here I go. John dived into Ruby's pussy and started massaging the insides with his tongue. Ruby's body bursted with pleasure. He's licking my pussy with my leggings and panties on. The fabric of her clothing was super thin, so Ruby could feel the glorious flicks of John's tongue perfectly. Ruby moaned again, then again. Soon Ruby couldn't go a second without letting her voice out in pleasure. Jean began to lick her more forcefully. Ruby couldn't take it much longer. She was about to come. She was going to do it. She was going to climax with Jean's mouth in her pussy. Jean suddenly stopped his licking. Why did you stop? Ruby complained, feeling dirty to have said such words. It's not fair you get all the fun. Jean started to unzip his pants. You have to help me satisfy my thirst as well. Jean's massive member sprang out of his pants, wet and thick, the smell of manliness. Whoa, Ruby thought, her eyes widening as the cock towered over her head. Well, you better get to it, Jean teased as he got back down to business with Ruby's pussy. Ruby had gotten advice from Yang before. First, she kissed the tip of the cock. Ruby recited the words that her sister told her in her head as she bent down to kiss the tip of Jean's monstrous cock. Then you start by giving it a good few licks. Ruby brushed her tongue along her partner's shaft, covering it with as much saliva as she could produce so it, according to Yang, can be used as lube. The penis tasted salty and bitter, but Ruby seemed to enjoy the taste. Ruby swirled her tongue around the tip of the penis, which Jean seemed to enjoy as his breathing had grown heavier, finally inserting the cock into her mouth. Starting with slow, soft strokes and then gradually increasing her speed, Ruby wrapped her lips around the tip and pushed the dick with all her might into her mouth. Wow, it's so huge, it barely fit in my mouth. Ruby's mouth was crammed with Jean's dick, her jaw aching at how wide she stretched her mouth. The scent of pre-cum enveloped her taste buds as Ruby thrusted the cock deeper into her mouth. Meanwhile, on the other side of the body, Jean sunk his tongue deeper into Ruby's pussy, started rubbing her clit simultaneously. It feels so good, Ruby exclaimed, Jean's cock still in her mouth, as a powerful wave of pleasure lit her body with tremendous force. She began sucking on her partner's cock harder, pushing the rod all the way into her mouth until it hit the end of her throat. Ruby's movements became more powerful, pushing the dick in and out of her throat like a psychopath thirsty for semen. Ruby would try to shove the whole cock into her mouth, pushing it so hard that the back of Ruby's throat became more sore from the tip, slamming into it every time. Then Ruby would release her tight hold of the penis and almost remove her mouth directly from the cock, with only the wet suction of Ruby's lips keeping the cock from slipping from her mouth. Then she would slam the rod back down into her mouth and repeat the whole thing again and again. I'm about to come, Ruby heard Jean say at the end of her body. Ruby could feel Jean's body tense up, trying to hold in his climax as much as possible, but it was no use. Ruby felt her mouth explode with Jean's cum. She felt the fluid fill her mouth around her nose. The flavor of manlyhood was thick and fresh in her mouth, making her climax shortly after Jean. Pleasure exploded in Ruby's body in every direction. Ruby's eyes lowered back as she grasped Jean's cock with her mouth even tighter than before. Jean continued to orgasm as he removed his dick from Ruby's mouth, shooting semen all over her face in an instant. Wow, Ruby's face and mouth was bombarded with the smell of cock as the orgasm started to die down. It's so thick and creamy, like glue. The semen tasted bitter in Ruby's mouth, but strangely she enjoyed it. Hey, Ruby heard Jean say, whipping her head in the direction of the voice. Open your mouth. Ruby reluctantly did so, gaping her mouth as wide as she could, stuck her tongue out like a snake. Wow, what a nice view, Jean exclaimed. I can see my semen on your tongue and in your throat. Jean placed his hand on Ruby's cheek, sinking his thumb into her mouth to open it bigger. Now swallow it, Jean ordered, to Ruby's surprise. She obeyed Jean's command and gulped down the creamy liquid. Jean's cum tasted amazing, sliding down Ruby's throat so smoothly. Some of Jean's semen spilled onto Ruby's fingers. Ruby stared at her hands, now sticky with the fluid. Lewd trails of the cum were visible to display the stickiness of the substance. Ruby sucked on her fingers, licking them cleaned from the cum. You enjoy the taste, hmm? Jean said mockingly. Well, enough with the foreplay. Let's enjoy the main course. Jean held Ruby's wrist tightly and pointed his already hard cock again at her pussy. Normally, Ruby would try to struggle to protect her virgin pussy, but right now, Ruby's mind was completely taken over by desire. Ruby wanted Jean to put his penis into her vagina and fuck her mindlessly. Ruby wanted Jean's cock. Ruby craved for Jean's cock. Jean began to teasingly rub his dick up and down against Ruby's pussy. He removed one of his hands from Ruby's wrist and started to fondle with Ruby's left breast. Ruby let out a small gasp. Jean's hand worked on Ruby's breast like an angel and quickly stopped to pinch her rock-hard nipples instead. This was too much for Ruby to handle. Hurry up and fuck me already, Ruby let out a cute, pleasurable, driven voice. Her face flushed red with embarrassment, but Ruby didn't care. She wanted Jean to fuck her already. I didn't catch that. Speak louder, Jean answered with a devilish grin. Ruby knew that Jean was obviously just teasing her, trying to force her to say those embarrassing words louder than before. I want you to fuck my pussy, Ruby exclaimed, loud enough for anybody a few meters away to hear. You mean that whole classroom right next to you? Very well then. The rubbing of Jean's dick stopped, disappointing Ruby for a moment, but then replaced by a sudden stab of pleasure. Ruby stared down at her crotch. Ah, the tip of penis in my vagina. The entrance of Ruby's pussy quivered with pleasure. Jean started sinking his penis deeper and deeper inside of Ruby. Ruby felt a sudden jolt of pain. Ruby got so carried away that she forgot this was her first time, so it naturally hurt. However, Ruby ignored this feeling as it distributed an equal amount of pleasure. Jean's thrust became harder and harder. The sounds of Ruby's wet pussy clenching down on Jean's cock echoed throughout the hallway. Oh, good! So it does mention they're still in the hallway. Oh, fuck. The pain on Ruby's vagina started to clear away and was replaced with more pleasure. Ruby noticed bits of her voice spilling out every time Jean thrusted his cock into her. Sex is amazing! Ruby's head went blank with pleasure. Jean began slamming his cock into Ruby's pussy. Tip of Jean's cock bashed Ruby's womb angrily, exerting pleasure throughout her body. Ruby stuck out her tongue instinctively and moaned so loudly it would be a miracle for nobody to hear. The tip of his cock, Ruby tilted her head backwards. It's kissing my womb. Jean continued his violent thrusts into Ruby's pussy. Ruby felt her walls tighten around Jean's huge rod. Her pussy was dripping wet with juices of pleasure, coating her lover's cock with the fluid. Jean's cock felt amazing. It was like a sword penetrating Ruby with such utmost strength. It filled her pussy with a heavenly sensation. Ruby shut her eyes. I'm about to. Ruby felt her innards ready to burst. She was going to climax again. You're about to come? Well, let's come together then. Jean started thrusting his hips even faster, bringing Ruby close to the verge of coming. Ruby began spreading her legs as far apart as possible. Her walls clamped together and tighter onto Jean's dick. Her breath became heavier. I'm coming! Ruby let out a cute shriek as she felt the wall of defense that she had against coming burst, leaving Ruby with pulses of pleasure that were otherworldly. The magnitude of the orgasm was way higher than the last one, making the whole of Ruby's body tremble with pleasure. Jean seemed to be coming too, as Ruby felt semen fill up her pussy entirely. Ah, you're gonna make me pregnant, Ruby complained softly. The arrival of Jean's semen in Ruby's crotch gave her another pulsate of pleasure. Ruby hugged Jean tightly to endure one last pulse. A rather strong one. Ruby's orgasm finally started to die down as she felt Jean's semen starting to leak out of her hole. Ruby stared down at her pussy. Whoa, your cock literally filled me all the way to the brim. The whole of Ruby's pussy was covered in Jean's spunk. It was Ruby's first cream pie. Some of it was leaking out. Ruby inserted 2 fingers into her crotch and then brought it to her mouth, licking off the sweet milk that coated. So rich and creamy. Ruby and Jean laid together for a couple of minutes, cuddling each other like couples. Jean managed a smile and sat up in the ceiling. This is my first time, and wow, sex is amazing, Jean huffed, Ruby's eyes wide in surprise. This was my first time too, Ruby stammered nervously. John smiled. Wow, so we had pure virgin sex. John smiled and turned his head, stared back in the ceiling. Hey, John said. Ruby, yeah? We should do this more often, huh? I mean, you know, to have sex. You think so? Ruby flushed. Yeah, it did feel good. Yeah, it did for me too, so fine, but only on weekends. Okay? The next day. The fuck? Why did you fuck Ruby, you bastard? Fuck you! Pyrrha exclaimed in the dorm room. The end. Woo! Another one down. And another one down. Another one down. Another one bites dust. Fucking skulls. Yeah, he's dead.
Yes, the Emerald Forest is
No, I saw one good fanfic, one good meme. Recently, it's like, what if Pyrrha was still alive, and it's her holding all these fanfic notes. It's John smiling. It's like, I never knew you wanted to do that kind of fun. And then everyone else is just shocked and ashamed. And Laura wants to wash her eyes out with maple syrup. It's quality.
Well, that's an improvement.
Hey, I can rank up again.
Another victory.
That's all I was doing that for. So I could press the rank up button. What was that? That was RWBY X Jordan. Pyrrha's one night stand. Ooh. Ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. Okay, I'll find another Neo one. Shouldn't be hard, just gotta type in Neo Ruby. And then click mature. And there are 24 of them. I've already read Neo's Icy. That's revenge, that's revenge. They're more revenge stories than romance stories. Oh fuck no, I'm not reading 24 books. 24 chapters, fuck that. Ooh, Neo Surveillance. Let's see what this one is. This is the short bio for this. Neo's been keeping an eye on Team RWBY and Team Juniper, but she can't let them all have all the fun, can she? However, she just wants to watch the young love blossom, as she loves romance and doesn't want to ruin it. Maybe she's not fully evil. Maybe she wants to start a new life with them. Neo is sitting at the large table with Cinder and Roman Jorrel about their master's plan to destroy Team RWBY, which was obviously gonna fail like the last 69 plans. All Neo could think about was the beautiful blonde she fought on the train and the team of girls she was with, what she could do with them. Soon Neo was headbutting the desk before she looked up and saw the meeting was finally over. She lifts her head up and sees Cinder walking away in a weird fashion, shaking her ass with every step. Neo suddenly started to drool with lust for Cinder's ass. Neo, dear, a moment of your time, please, Roman signals her. She audibly rolls her eyes from being broken from her lustful daydream and follows him to his quarters, closes the door behind her. Work your beautiful slutty magic, Neo, he says, pulling his pants down and letting out his 10-inch cock. She pulls out a piece of paper saying, fine, and quickly starts sucking his dick. She... Literally a minute later, coming in her mouth, Neo storms off and pulls out her scroll to watch the camera she placed in Team RWBY dorm room. Ruby, give me my pants, Weiss shouted at the girlfriend chasing her around the room. Catch me if you can, Ruby taunts while dashing around, covering the room in rose petals. Fine, Weiss magics a ice wall in front of Ruby and causing her to crash into it. Ruby! Weiss quickly runs over to her and picks her up. I'm so sorry, Ruby. Weiss cries as she places Ruby on her bed. I'm fine, Weiss, Ruby says, sitting up and kissing Weiss on the cheek. Weiss gets her panties from the floor and puts them away. Since class isn't on today, do you want to play video games? She says, sitting next to Ruby. Neo looks at you reading this and holds a peeper saying, wait until next chapter to see what happens next, 'cause I sure can't. Also, Neo, you actually missed one of the best fucking fan fictions of Neo X Roman I've read in a while. I think you've missed it. I remember you commenting just after I finished reading it. You and Torchwick both missed it. Believe it was called... Not Neo's Icy, it was called Heist Cream. Yeah, there was a fanfic called Heist Cream, which was Roman X Neo. It was set right before the events of when Roman robs the dust shop, like before the events of the 4 red, white, black, yellow trailers. Such quality, so good. Ooh, Rosewick Chronicles, 6 chapters. Fuck. Ooh. Part 1, the Red Maiden Prologue. Crow staggered into his house and shrugged off his jacket. He collapsed into an armchair by the fire before turning to you, the reader, and taking out his bourbon. So there's these rumors of parallel universes floating around, and well, as much as I can't disapprove of their existence, it seems only right that I explain what is going on here. In this realm, the story of Team RWBY diverges to what you might be used to. He paused, took a long drink of his bourbon before he continued. In this version of the story, Roman and Neo changed side. Yeah, they became good guys and agreed to work for us. Not long after Roman was arrested, Neo came to us and signed that she wanted to set Roman free. She was a mute. He looked down at his hands, flexing them before he continued. Then the fell came. Disaster struck the festivals. Penny was torn to pieces. Grimm attacked. Beacon was in ruins. Oz was missing. And then we lost Pyrrha. Crow pinches the bridge of his nose. The positives, though, were Ruby unlocking her silver eye power, just like Summers. She didn't do it alone, though. Losses were many, and although she was weakened, the Dragon Grimm for us, it is still alive and waiting. Only issue left was where Cinder would strike next. We reported to all the headmasters of the various academies. Of course, Ironwood closed his borders, and Vacuo failed to respond. Lionheart was the only headmaster who asked for aid. The swiftness of his response caused a lot of concern. He seemed too eager. Crow stretched out his arms and rose to his feet, pacing the length of the fireplace. The next thing we knew, it was time to head to Haven. Adam had been taken out by some kid named Ilya, so the White Fang were under our control too. Everything was in place. All we needed now was some inside eyes for what was going on. That's when Neo volunteered. Her ability to shift forms made her unique, and that's exactly what we needed right now. Roman, of course, protested. The night before the raid, she snuck out and then was found out. Crow punched the wall next to the fireplace. We lost her to Cinder. It was Salem's orders. So to make good on our agreement with Roman, he worked for us. Was free to go as he pleased. Only saw the aftermath of what happened there. Ruby saw Neo's body, crumpled on the floor, and she lost it totally. She used all her power on Cinder and ended the fight in minutes. I got there to be met with a sight of Weiss, who was sat on the floor cradling a young boy. He looked like a farmhand and was still alive. Ren and Nora were in tears cradling John. He was dead too. Blake and Yang had left to pursue the remainder of Cinder's crew. I found Roman unconscious and covered in blood. As I knelt down to help him, he asked about Neo. It was a solemn day all around. To make matters worse, her body was never recovered from the scene. It's closure I'm sure Roman needed. He turned back to look at you, the reader. Let's begin. Roman woke up and instantly froze. Something wasn't right. This wasn't one of his strong houses. He blinked, slowly refocusing his eyes as he went to move. He felt the pressure of another body laying on his chest. Casting his eyes down, he was met by the sight of short black hair and the smell of strawberries and cookies. Who the fuck was this? He allowed his eyes to scan the rest of the room and found the bed he was laying in was elevated. The room looked like a dormitory, and he just wanted to leave. He was pretty certain the bed would collapse if he didn't soon. Ruby opened her eyes and yawned. Quickly, she noticed that she wasn't alone in her bed. She froze and tried to think back to the previous night. Inhaling all she could was the smell of tobacco and a slightly musty aroma. Slowly, she lifted her head and looked up at who she was laying on. She locked eyes with a familiar face. Green met silver for but a moment. She gasped and immediately activated her semblance, speeding across the room to land on Yang's bed, leaving behind a trail of rose petals. Her own bed rocked violently back and forth from the force. Good morning to you too, Red. Roman chuckled. What are you doing here? Ruby chuckled in response. I'm hurt. Are you really telling me that you don't remember? Was his cool reply. Ruby paused and thought for a moment. What happened to her last night? Slowly a red blush spread across her cheeks as she remembered. Last night. Come on, guys. It's not every day that you save the world and still huntresses in training. Yang cheered, bouncing around Team Ruby's room. I, for one, agree with you. We've earned a night of fun, Weiss said, crackling a rare smile. I'm not feeling up to celebrating anything, Blake said with a solemn look on her face. Look, I know that Adam disappeared, but we'll get him, I promise you. I bet my arm, Yang retorted. Come on, Blakey. With that, she scooped up her partner and left the room. If you're coming, then you've got to come now, Weiss said, standing up and walking towards the door. Nodding, Ruby reluctantly followed her partner out. There was no way she was in the mood to party. There had been too many lives lost in the final battle. The four of them arrived at the Juniors Club and met with Team SSSN, Nora and Ren. Let's have a good night. That's what Pierre and John would have wanted. That, Ren said, hugging Nora to his side. Agreed, said Blake, a pained smile on her face. They all headed into the club. Weiss and Neptune, Nora, Ren, Yang and Blake, Sage and Scarlet all hand in hand. Ruby shuffled in behind them with Sun, the only other single. His gaze was downcast at her feet. She really didn't want to be there. Roman stood on the opposite side of the street, watching as the group made their way in. He let out a long sigh and he smoked his cigar. If Little Red gets accepted into that club, I'll eat my hat, he thought. And 5. He inhaled a long breath. 4. He grabbed his cane. 3. He pushed off the wall. 2. He crossed the road. 1. He breathed out a small trail of smoke behind him. As he reached the doors of the club, Ruby came rushing out, shouting over her shoulder, Yang. It's okay, put the bouncer down. He's only doing his job. I'm not that bothered. I'll just head back to Beacon. Well, Red, still too young to party. Roman chuckled. Ruby, surprised by the sudden noise, stumbled before turning to face him. Quickly realizing who it was, she scowled and walked away. The nerve of him, she thought. Hey, Red, wait up, please. I'm sorry. Let's at least talk. Roman called up after her. Ruby kept walking to refuse to stop. Hey, Red. Roman reached out for her cape just as she activated her semblance and sped off down the street, petals falling to the floor in her wake. She took a sharp turn down a side street before she sobbed, tears from her eyes. How could he? After everything that had happened, he dared talk to me? She cried as she punched the walls. He blamed me for it all. I hate him. Well, well, what have we here? Ruby's eyes shot up as two strangers entered the alley from either side. Instinctively, she reached behind her crescent for her crescent rose, only to realize she left it at Beacon. Slight panic took over as the two guys closed in on her. What can I do? She thought. Her semblance was out of the question after having just used it. The moon was cast a dim light in the alley, eliminating the two of them. They were Beacon students. Oh look, it's the hero, the taller one said as he put her hand on her shoulder. You know I got kicked out, right? I was in your class but sold him information to Cinder, and when you blew the plan, Gunders kicked me out. Shaking, she closed her eyes as he pulled out a knife and held it up to her. The second joined them and knelt down. He pulled a knife and tore at Ruby's skirt. No, stop it! Ruby shrieked before she was silenced by lips roughly crushed against hers. She bit down on the tongue being forced in her mouth. Get off me! Help! Someone! Anyone! Chapter 2. Damn it, Raymond muttered as he watched Ruby disappear into a trail of rose petals. He turned away and started to walk back to Junior's club. If only she'd talked to me. I have a heart. I was just angry and hurting. It wasn't her fault. He sighed, thoughts running around his mind. Get off me! Help! Someone! Anyone! A voice cried from an alleyway. Shit, Red! Roman cried out and turning and running in the direction she shot off in. He could stop himself from rushing down the alley to see Ruby pinned against the wall by a man with another one on his knees tearing her skirt off. The man pinning her down had his lips crushed against hers. Roman saw a tear roll down her cheek. In an instant he brought his cane up and fired off a fire dust round at the guy on his knees. The moment the round made contact he flew to his side, his aura preventing him from being instantly killed. Next Roman aimed the cane at the other guy. Let her go, he growled. A smirk appeared on the other guy's face as he spun Ruby face to face. Roman was using her as a shield. We'll see about that, he taunted, producing a knife and placing it at Ruby's throat. I bet you've heard of aura-piercing blades, no? Grinning at Roman, he used his other hand to tear Ruby's top down, exposing her breasts. His grin spread as he squeezed one of her nipples in his hand, eliciting a groan of pain from Ruby. He then bit down on her neck, drawing blood. Seeing the pain on her face, Roman oozed with hatred. Slowly he lowered his cane, flipping it round in his hand. Alright, I'm sorry, I'll go now. Roman looked away from the scene. Good, now get lost and let us have our fun. The student spat at Roman as his friend slowly got back up off the ground. He pushed Ruby back against the wall and cut her corset off. Roman paused for a moment, looking out to the main drive. She didn't want his help. Before Roman could really question why he turned back, raised his cane towards Ruby, using the extendable hook to wrap around her waist and pull her to his side. Semblance, Red! He shouted. Ruby immediately placed her feet on the ground and sped them off back to the main street. As soon as they got there, Roman scooped her up and ran. Once they were 3 blocks away, he placed her down and shrugged off his jacket, handing it to her. Here, wear this, he said to her. You okay? Concern etched into his features. She took it and covered herself, her clothes totally ruined. She looked her saviour up and down. 1 second. He had the same black bowler hat on, with his grey scarf, black shirt and brown trousers. His shirt hugged to his body through, though, showing off his strength underneath. Leave me alone, she snapped back at him, remembering herself and looked away, fighting back tears. Fine, I'll leave you to it then, he replied as he turned to leave Ruby. She took a hold of his arm. Please don't leave me, she squeaked. Okay, Red, let's take you home, he replied, taking hold of her hand and guiding her towards the beacon. The walk back was an awkward and silent one, without any trouble, luckily. Upon arriving, he saw her back to her room and went to leave again. However, she grabbed onto his back and shook her head. Stay, she said to him. Turning back around, he said, I thought you hated me. I do. Then let me go, Red. You hate me, though, because I couldn't save her, and then John died. He was protecting you. She shouted, beating her hands off her chest. I know that, God damn it, he shouted back. I lost Neo too, you know. She was like a sister to me. Tear fell from his right eye. I don't hate you, though. Neo knew the risks and still went anyway. No one could stop her. She always looked up to you, Red. You were a hero and mine. I never knew. I'm so sorry. Ruby shuffled back from him. She would still be here if you stayed with Cinder. She probably would be, but I'd be dead. Roman smiled slightly at Ruby. There's no way you'd have let me continue to terrorize everyone if we were still enemies. Besides, Cinder really hated me. She wasn't all that in the sack either. Roman! Ruby's eyes opened with shock. I'm going to forget that last bit. Why did Cinder hate you? It's more of a show than tell, Red, he said calmly as he unbuttoned his black shirt, shrugging it off to reveal burn scars all across his upper body and back. Cinder wasn't ever in the best of moods, and let's just say she had a short fuse when it came to failure. When I betrayed her, my punishment was Neo's death and forfeiting my left eye. He swept his bangs away to reveal the empty socket where his eye once was. You then lost the one you loved when he came in and saved my life. His healing was the only reason I'm still here. Ruby's eyes were downcast. Shit, she still hates me. I should never have brought up the blonde guy. Right, well, I'll be off then. He started to pull his shirt back up, only for Ruby to stop him. She pushed his shirt fully off and kissed each of his scars as tears fell from her eyes. Red? He watched her in stunned silence. She paused. You're wrong. She looked up to his face. The only way I would have lost the one I loved, it would be if you died. Oh, that's... Red, what do you mean? Memories flashed through Roman's mind. They grew so close during their time protecting Haven. Did he love her? Did she really love him? Testing a theory, he reached out and pushed his jacket off her, exposing her torn clothes once more. He cupped her face in his hands, pulling her to look at him. What are we doing here, Red? He asked her. Right now I'm running off impulse, she replied, before stretching up onto her tiptoes, capturing his lips and sloppy, inexperienced kiss. Fucking can't say that word. Registering, fuck. What was happening, he soon took over the kiss, returning and deepening it. Slowly he wound his arms down, lifting her from her thighs, wrapping her legs around his waist. He walked forward into the room and kicked the door closed behind him, breaking only for air as they stay locked like this with their bare chests touching. Pulling away, Roman looked at Ruby, both panting slightly. What now? Ruby asked, her cheeks flushed. What do you want to do? Roman returned. You, she said with a smirk. As you wish. He grinned back, feeling genuinely happy for the first time in a long while. Roman carried Ruby to one of the precarious beds in her dorm, deducing that the messiest one was hers. He placed her down before removing all of her torn-up clothes. Being careful of the wound on her neck, he climbed on top of her and licked it clean. Her arms becoming wrapped around his neck, he could feel his erection grow. He had a naked Ruby under him. She even said she loved him. Hey Red, how old are you? He looked down as the young huntress under him. I'm 17, she replied. How old are you? Far too old for you. He stood up and took a step back. I should leave. Don't. Her silver eyes seemed to glow in the moonlight. Besides, I should probably help you with that. Now, the fanfic keeps on going, but in all legitimacy, he should still back off and leave. Yeah, please. He's like, how old are you? Yeah, I should leave. It should have just ended with him putting on the jacket and walking out the fucking door. Just like, yep, no, fuck this shit, I'm out. But no, apparently this continues. Let's continue it. Actually, no, fuck that, I'm not even gonna continue it. He puts on his jacket, he walks out the door, and he has a good night. The end. I'm not doing another chapter and another 2 chapters of this. Yeah, I'm not reading that. I mean, I'll read gay fanfic. I'll read fucking lesbian fanfic. I'll read normal fanfic, but I sure as shit aren't reading underage fanfic. Nah, there's lines I don't fucking cross. Are you angry at me, or the fact that I'm not reading the comic? Or are you happy that I'm not reading the comic? I've realized I've just asked a complicated question to a person who can only post emojis. So, smiley face for wanting me to continue with this one, or angry face for wanting me to stop. There you go. Your choice. Since you are the only viewer right now. Heavy face, continue? Okay, fine. She pointed to his erection that was becoming more and more visible. He grinned and removed his pants. Then he climbed back on top of her. He caught her lips again in a deep, passionate kiss while moving his hands down towards one of her small, perky breasts. Brushing a nipple with his thumb, he felt her back arch into him. Smiling into the kiss, he massaged both breasts until she let out a small moan. Small, soft moan. Upon hearing this, he felt his erection twitch. He wanted to be inside. Shaking his head slightly, he traced kisses down the side of her jaw, down her neck, stopping to suck on her milky skin next to the bite mark long enough to leave a noticeable mark, all the while still working on her breasts. Once he finished with her neck, he moved down to her chest. Taking a nipple in his mouth, he sucked and nipped gently at it, bringing out a long, throaty moan from RWBY. He was now fully hard and twitching like crazy. He tried to entangle himself from RWBY. "What are you doing?" she asked, feeling him move away from her. "We need condoms, Red." He quickly scooped his trousers up from the floor and pulled out one out of his pocket. "Do we have to use one?" she asked him. "Yes, Red. I'm not being the poor bastard that knocks you up." He shook his head. "Crow doesn't like me all that much anyways." You could tell that RWBY wasn't thrilled by his caution. Moving himself back up onto the bed, he put the condom on and aligned himself with her entrance, only to stop, panic setting into his stomach. "Hey, RWBY, is this your first time?" he asked. A small nod was all she could manage. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" "Yes," she replied, taking his lips once more, surrendering herself to him. He accepted this. She was consenting, but now he regretted his previous cinder comment. Slowly he entered her. A tear escaped her eye as the pain registered in her lower body, blood dripping down onto the bed sheets. Urging him to continue, she pushed her hips into him, and he pushed in and out of her slowly, but at a steady pace. Soon the pain faded into pleasure, and she felt herself relax into his rhythm. Noticing that she had relaxed, Roman sped up his thrust slightly, allowing himself to groan slightly before kissing RWBY again. He felt her walls tighten slightly, causing him to speed up even more. "I'm close, Red. I should pull out," he said. "No, I don't want you. Keep going. Besides, you're wearing a condom." "There's always a risk, though. If I don't stop now, I won't be able to." "Then don't," she said, biting down onto his lips and willing him to go faster. He obliged before reaching his climax, shaking with thrill of how good it felt and hold her tightly in his arms. He pulled off her and settled onto his back, removing the condom, dropping it into the trash can as she snuggled into his chest. "I think I love you," he whispered to her. The only response he got was a sound of soft snoring. He grabbed the sheets and pulled them up over them both. "Good night, RWBY." Back to the present. Roman satisfied that she had remembered. He got up and shrugged his clothes back on. "I'd best be off now, Red. I'd hate for Blondie to find me here," he said to her. "I want to see you again," she replied. "Any time." He turned to open the door, only for it to burst open, revealing a very drunk Yang being propped up by a Blake. All of them froze before Yang looked between Roman and her sister, sat wrapped in a sheet on her bed. Her eyes flashed red. "Well, shit." How much of this chapter is there? All good. Well, that was the first 2 chapters. Unfortunately, I've hit my time limit of 2 hours. I'm trying to save as much data as I can, considering I'm almost out, and I've got another fucking half a month of streaming to go. So all in good fun. I look forward to seeing people for tomorrow for the Rainbow Six Penny Siege, Rainbow Six Penny Siege stream. Also might do Blake's Stories stream. Stories are Path of Destinies is the game. Rainbow Six Siege is the game instead of Rainbow Six Penny. And maybe Spider-Jawn. I don't know. Depends on how much internet I have by the end of tomorrow. Until then, I'll see you all later. Au revoir.